When I think of FSP, I think about OEM power supplies, not PC cases. Here we've got the brand new FSP CUT593. It's a very interesting case that we saw last year at Computex. We've got one here. We're gonna do our usual thing. We're gonna take a look. We're gonna test the thermals. I'm gonna let you guys know what I think of this very interesting new case from FSP. But before that, here's a word from today's video sponsor.
This video is brought to you by VIPSCDKey.com. You install Windows and you see the watermark of death. You don't need to fork out a couple $100 for a key. You can grab one from today's video sponsor. From VIPSCDKey.com for a tenth of the price, and you can use our code GEAR to get 25% off. How good's that? That takes that already cheap Windows key and makes it even cheaper. You place your order, bingo bango, you've got your key on your orders page, you chuck that key into the activation screen and you're good to go. No more watermark of death. Use code GEAR for 25% off, link in the description. On with the video.
To remove the TG side panels, there's a little bit of fabric that says FSP on it. You can just pull that away and lift the TG panel away from the case. For the top panel, there's a single captive thumb screw. Loosen it up and slide the panel backwards, and then lift it away from the case. It's a plastic panel as well. Removing the rear TG panel is the same as the front side one. There's a little fabric tab, pull it and lift the panel away. Lastly, the front panel is magnetic and you just pull it away from the case. With the premium edition of the case, there is an included extra front panel that's metal, not plastic, and it's also mesh. Let us know which one you think is the better looking one, the stock one or this metal one. One of the most obvious features with this case is it's got built-in cable routing for your 24-pin power cables, as well as cable routing for your EPS power cable. It's magnetic like most of the other panels on the case. We can just pull it away. Guess what? It includes grommets in case you wanted to install them. I should have just had these in there in the first place, but I kind of get it because of those pre-routed cables. There's also this metal panel that's on a hinge, which you can drop away from the case as well to give you access to the basement of the case. This gives you an idea of what cable management is like on the backside of the CUT593. It's got tie down points for the 24-pin power cables. It's got tie down points along the top of the case, but the reason why this is more interesting than anything else is I think this case is based on another chassis from someone like Thermaltake, I'm gonna say. And the reason why I think it's Thermaltake is for one really obvious reason. Check this out. This is a weird observation, but this is from many, many years of reviewing cases. This blackness from the feet, watch this, right? That just gets left on tables is Aerocool or Thermaltake, right? How do I know this? I've done hundreds of case reviews and this is a pattern that I've seen. So this case is based on something from one of those manufacturers. For maximum PSU length with the hard drive cage installed, you're looking at about 170 millimeters in total, which is pretty standard. You've got a 2.5 inch bay here. You've also got two 3.5 inch bays in the cage at the bottom of the case. There's a pre-installed bracket for another 3.5 inch spinning rush drive on the bottom of the case. And two 2.5 inch SSDs can be mounted here and here at the front of the case. There's 4 included fans. There's a 140mm fan at the back. All these fans are addressable RGB. However, they are DC powered, not PWM powered. There's also 3 more 140mm fans at the front of the case as well, totaling 4 fans. The fans are DC powered, not PWM powered, but you can daisy chain all the fans, which is nice. There's no controllers with this case whatsoever, which means if you're planning on using the RGB in this case, you're going to need to use your motherboard lighting or another controller. As for fan and radiator support at the top, you can do 3 120mm fans or 2 140mm fans maximum. And for radiators, same deal, you can do a 280mm rad or a 360mm rad up. Something I thought was worth mentioning is you'll notice that the front panel sits quite high up and that top panel also kind of does the same thing. That's because FSP designed this case to allow you to do a push-pull configuration, or you can just put your fans above the radiator so you don't have to put them on the inside of the case, which will increase some clearance. So push-pull doesn't really help performance, it just makes everything louder. The front of the case is much the same. You can do up to 280mm rads up the front or a 360mm rad up the front, or you can do 3 140mm fans or 3 120mm fans up there. The documentation for the case doesn't mention this, but it does have fan mounting holes on the bottom of the case, and it looks as though you can do 3 120mm fans on the bottom as well. Yeah, I wonder why they didn't document that. The CUT593 supports from ITX up to ATX. The thing that I noticed with this though is there's a row of standoffs that aren't pre-installed. There's no center peg standoff to help with aligning the motherboard. But I also noticed there's additional threaded screw holes here, here, and here that would indicate that this would allow you to install up to EEB sized or CEB sized motherboards. I'm not sure why they didn't talk about that, considering you could probably feed all of your additional cables through this hole here and you wouldn't have an issue with powering these much bigger boards. As well as that, they have additional cutouts at the top as well. And a lot of these other boards have their EPS power cables on this side of the motherboard. On the front panel I/O, we've got a power button, we've got a reset button, a USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A port, a headphone jack, a microphone jack, another Type A port, and a Type C port. There's also a power light and activity light next to the power button as well. For GPU support, it supports GPUs up to 400 mils in length, which is pretty standard. I am a bit confused as to why a case in 2024 does not natively support vertical GPU mounting. The PCIe slots have these horizontal braces between each of the slots, and that means that typically you can't install a vertical GPU bracket. There are other options like using a Dremel or some tin snips to cut these out, but the fact that they're just not cut out from factory leads me to believe that this is again based on a very cheap chassis from another manufacturer. There's little things like the bottom of the case is plastic and it's screwed into the chassis, which isn't unusual. We do see this quite a lot with cases. The front panel is much the same as well. It almost looks out of place. And again, if we put that top panel back on, you can see what I'm talking about. It's just kind of like this chassis that they've bolted a bunch of their own plastic panels to, which again is not unusual. I think they've done a fairly decent job with the design of these panels. They don't look terrible. There's a magnetic dust filter on the front of the case, which is from factory attached with Kapton tape. Hey, at least if you've run out of Kapton tape when you're soldering stuff, you've got some spare, right? That's a bonus. There's also a dust filter for the power supply on the bottom of the case, which can be slid out. And there's a dust filter on the inside of the top panel, which is not removable, but you can just remove the whole top panel anyway, so it doesn't really make that much of a difference. That's everything I think you need to know about this new case from FSP. Let's do the usual thing. Let's build, test the thermals, and see what the dealio is. thermals, the CUT593 is fairly average, considering the 7800X3D is not a very hot CPU. And what we're seeing with the thermals reflected here is that it runs a bit warmer than it should, especially with the 360ml liquid cooler. And I think that's got a lot to do with the filter that's on the top panel. There's also a filter on the inside of the case and on that front panel as well. I tested the thermals with no front panel on and with that filter on as well, just to give you guys a bit of perspective of what it's like with all the filters on and off. And you can see that there is a considerable difference here. So the combination that I would probably suggest is not using the stock front panel, the plastic one, and using the metal one, just to offset those thermals a little bit better. The thermals are average, what can I say? They're not great, but they're also not terrible. And the truth is, we're not really getting the whole story here with the 7800X3D because typically, as mentioned, it just doesn't run that hot. But we are seeing warm temperatures for this chip here. If you're interested in any of the hardware used in this build, there's a PCPartPicker list down below in the description, but I used little cards during the build section of the video to show what all the hardware is, just so you don't have to ask just in case you didn't see the PCPartPicker list. Anyways, guys, what do I think of this new FSP case, the CUT593? Well, it's kind of one of those cases that I feel like FSP doesn't need to make cases, right? They make the market. FSP doesn't need to make cases. They're known for their OEM power supplies and they make really good power supplies, right? There's no debating that. But when it comes to cases, I feel like they're just trying to tack on an extra set of products to their already extensive product stack that just doesn't need to exist. What do I mean by that? Well, the chassis of this case, it's just from some other random case that they found from a factory in China somewhere, and they've put their own plastic panels on it to make it look more premium than it actually is. But have they pulled this off? Well, in short, kind of. The quality of the plastic parts that they've added to whatever chassis this is actually quite nice. Like, it doesn't look too bad. Personally, I prefer it with the metal front panel, not the plastic one that it ships with, for a couple of reasons. First of all, as we saw with the thermals are better without the stock front panel. Using the metal one is better, but it only comes with the Pro version as far as I know. If there's one suggestion I can make to FSP about quality control with this case, it would be that they should have much stronger magnets for all the side panels and hinges and anywhere that anything closes, or just add an option to have screws for some of the panels as well, right? Because if I'm being honest, although you can change the cables as we saw in the back of the build for this, I probably wouldn't recommend doing it because the cables that FSP ships with the case are thinner than any paracord sleeve cables you might want to swap out here. It took me a good half an hour to rerun all the cables through the combs on the back of the motherboard tray. So, you know, that's completely up to you. There might be one or two people who ask, can I change the stock cables? The answer is yes, but should you do it? Probably not. Not unless you have thinner cables, because the cable combs kind of stretch and then it just becomes a big pain in the ass to change out. But I did it because I wanted to know so I could answer the question for you guys. Yes, you can change it, but should you? No. To be honest, the CUT593 is not a terrible case by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I would say it's an adequate case. You get 4 included addressable RGB fans. They're all 140mm fans. Yeah, they're only DC powered and whatnot, but I don't think that is really a deal breaker, considering with DC fans, you can still control the speed. They don't spin as slowly as a PWM fan, depending on the fan as well, but they're relatively quiet and you can't really hear these fans at all. So I think that whatever FSP has chosen for the included fans, they're not terrible. This is the part of the video where all of this kind of falls to pieces for FSP, because in terms of their power supplies are priced very competitively and the quality of their power supplies is awesome. The main issue I have for the CUT593 and the whole CUT593 product stack, because there's a whole bunch of them, is the price. The base price without fans or anything like that is $109 US. You can get a Montech case that's way better quality than this for a lot less money. And for the version that we've got here, this one is $159 with the fans included and the included cable extensions. I still think that's a bit too much money. I think FSP is trying to say, hey, you're getting fans and you're getting cable extensions and all of these things for $159 US, but I think it's probably $50 US too expensive for the quality of the case. That's all I got to say about it. It is a little bit expensive for what it is, and it's not a terrible case by any stretch of the imagination. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad case. It's just too expensive for the money. I really wanted to love this case, but the price is the biggest letdown for me. Let us know what you guys think of the FSP CUT593. We did see this at Computex. We didn't cover it when we were at Computex because we were walking past the FSP booth and I was like, hang on, FSP's making cases now? That's a bit weird, but yeah. I really wanted to love this more, as I said, but it's hard to love it when it has just weird things. Even like the plastic feet on the bottom, how they leave black marks all over white tabletops. This is something that I've complained about for years with cheaper cases. They can just fix that by changing the material on the bottom of the case. And I know that people won't move their cases around that much and it may not be a problem and who gives a shit if it does that, but I care because it means I have to clean my table every 2 minutes when I'm filming, right? Yeah, that's annoying. Look at me being so entitled. Oh, you have to move it around, oh, whatever. Anyway, not a terrible case. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section down below. I'm your boy Nick with Gear Seekers. That's going to do it for this video. You peek, we seek, and watch a video up here about something. It's on the other side today, Claire.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, I'm slowly showing them like little changes that we've made to the studio as the bigger stuff happens on the other angles. Does that make sense? Like, I'm kind of filming around the stuff that we're doing and showing them like one thing that's complete, like this thing behind me. Like, that's different. Maybe I could show you really quickly. Check this out, guys. Let me see. It's different. Like, the walls all blacked out, and yeah, you guys will see. This thing's gonna be so sick. You're gonna like it. I promise you're going to love what we're doing. We're getting there. It's gonna be another couple of weeks before we're done, but I'm excited.